Hi there, it's Kristen from k.becca, and in today's video, I'll be showing you how to create a personalized stamp using the Silhouette Mint stamp machine. First, I want to open up Mint Studio, which is the software that you need to design stamps for the Mint. I talked more about Mint Studio in an earlier video that I made about the Mint, and the link to that should be popping up now if you want to go and check that out before watching this video. Once I've opened up Mint Studio, I'll click the Design tab to open a file in Design View. This is where we'll design our stamp. I'll be using the 45 by 45 millimeter size for this stamp, and I've already opened the Stamp Settings menu from the top right and chosen the correct size from all of the sizes that are listed. Next, I want to open the PNG file with the illustration that I'll be using on the stamp. This is the Baked with Love sentiment from the Cupcake Cuties Christmas Phrases digital stamp set, and I'll have a link to that below the video. When I first open the file, you'll see that it's very large and you can only really see part of one of the letters in the sentiment. In order to scale it down, I'll click the image to select it and open the scale window from the top right menu. I could manually scale this image using the width and height settings, but instead I'm going to go down and click the Fit to Stamp button, which automatically resizes the image to fit the stamp. Since I'll be personalizing the stamp in the area below the sentiment, I want to make sure that the image is a little bit smaller, so I'll mouse over one of the little square handles that are in the corners of the selected box until a double-ended diagonal arrow icon appears. You can't see this icon in the screencast for some reason, but it will be there in your software. Then I'll drag the arrow icon inward to resize the image. After that, I'll click the Type tool from the left menu and choose a font from the font style area on the right. Since the main sentiment is kind of whimsical and scripty, I want to use a font that's in contrast to that. So I'm going to go with a clean sans serif font. I'm using Open Sans here, which is a free font, and I'll include the link to the download in the area below the video. Then, with the Type tool still selected, I'll click on the design area and type in By Kristen to personalize the stamp. You can see that the default font size is way too large for the stamp. So when I'm done typing, I'll click the personalized area to select it, then type a smaller size into the type size input area. I was pretty conservative and kept the font on the larger size since this was my first time designing a stamp using a personalized font element, but in hindsight I could have gone at least 4 or 5 points smaller and still had good results. Once I'm done resizing the font, I want to adjust the letter spacing to give the letters a little more breathing room. I'll do that by increasing the percentage in the character spacing input box. I initially went with 115%, but I still wanted a touch more spacing and adjusted it up to 120%. Next, I want to rotate the Baked with Love sentiment a little bit to close the gap of white space that's on the right underneath the sentiment. To do that, I'll go to the top left menu and choose Object, then Rotate Options to open the Rotate window. I initially rotated the image 5 degrees clockwise using the angle input box, and then I rotated it 7 degrees, but I thought that the 7 degrees was too much, so I pressed Control or Command if you're on a Mac, plus Z to undo the 7 degrees. The 7 degrees stayed in the angle input box though, and I wanted to mention it here so that there wouldn't be any confusion. After that, I'll click and drag to select both the sentiment and the personalized area. Then I'll go to the top left menu and choose Object, then Align Center to center the two elements. Then I want to close the gap a bit between the sentiment and personalized area, so I'll click the personalized area to select it, then nudge it upward a few pixels with the up arrow on my keyboard. And after that, I'll click and drag to select both elements and nudge them upward a little so the stamp is more centered on the stamp sheet when I print it. Next, I'll click the mint leaf icon in the top right menu to open the Send to Mint window. And you'll see that when I do this, the stamp is automatically mirrored so it prints the correct way. I have my mint machine on and ready, so I'll press the Start Mint button, and the status in the bottom window will change to Insert 45 by 45 stamp sheet. I'm going to go and do that, and I'll see you on the flip side. When I hit the Start Mint button in Mint Studio, the blue power button on the Mint machine starts blinking to indicate that it's ready for the stamp sheet. I'll place the correct size stamp sheet into the back of the machine, and you can see that it immediately feeds into the machine and starts printing. If you're watching in Mint Studio, you'll see the status change to detecting media, then initializing, then printing. I left this part in real time so you can see how quickly the printing happens. When the stamp is finished printing, you can see that the design is now raised on the surface of the stamp sheet. I'll fold the cardboard frame that holds the stamp sheet along perforated lines and tear that piece off so I can remove my stamp. The stamp is covered with a piece of protective plastic that's kind of like cling wrap, and if that doesn't come off when you take the stamp out, then you'll need to peel it off so you can use the stamp. I have a stamp mount and stamp base here in the stamps matching size, and the stamp mount, which is the white plastic piece, just slides and clicks into place on the stamp base. This is great because you don't have to buy a new block for every stamp that you make. Just slide the mounted stamp off when you're done using it and store it separately. Once the mount is on the block, I'll remove the lid and peel away the protective paper from the top of the mount. Then I'll line up my stamp and adhere it to the mount. After this, I'm ready to ink my stamp. I'm using the red ink for the mint for this since I had Christmas baking in mind when I designed the stamp, and I think that the red is very Christmassy. I'm covering every part of the stamp image with the ink, and you'll see that it's a thick ink and sort of sits on top of the stamp. When you're done covering the image with ink, let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes so the ink can absorb into the stamp. Okay, so the ink has been sitting for about 8 minutes, and now I'm ready to start stamping. For the first several impressions, I always use a piece of scrap paper or a piece of printer paper that's been folded in half. I fold it in half because the first several impressions are pretty inky, and the ink has the tendency to soak through a single layer of printer paper. I was actually really surprised when I started stamping this out because this was the first time I had used the red ink, and it seemed to be a lot thicker than the black ink, which is what I typically use. It was almost like paint instead of ink, and you'll see the stamp slide around when I stamp the first impression because there's so much excess ink. Maybe I added too much ink, I'm not sure. I'll continue to stamp several impressions until any excess ink is removed from the stamp, and I also used a paper towel to clean off an area of excess ink that was along the side of the stamp. Now I'm going to stamp on a piece of cardstock that I cut to 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches, and I'll use a hole punch to make a place where I can put a ribbon through the corner of the tag. Then I'll get some matching ribbon and thread it through the hole, and I have a simple personalized gift tag that I can tie onto boxes, bags, and packages of home-baked holiday treats. You can find a full list of supplies used in this project in the description area below, or in the area below the video if you're watching on k.becca.com. If you enjoyed this project and would like to see more videos like this one, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you'll tune in again soon.